Hey everyone, this is Mark Bates, and this is the Rabbit Room Apologetics podcast. Thanks for joining us. So, this episode is closely tied to the ones where I'm talking about the article I'm writing, Adam the Serpent and the Architecture of Rebellion. And I'm posting that one up as I'm working on each section so that you can read that and you can comment on it. This is actually one I did a little bit earlier. I revised it recently. And this will be added as an appendix to that article. But what brought this up was I was in another group and we were talking about some stuff and the garden came up and the comment was that essentially Adam, either A, shouldn't have taken of the fruit, B, should have just gone to God because God is a God of love and he would be he would ask for retribution or some way of bringing Eve back into compliance, restoration, or he should have gone and said, take my life instead of hers and all that, and none of those are really good answers to the problem here. And so I revised this a little bit, updated it, and I'm putting it out again so that so the entire text of the article will be on my blog site, and the blog and the link to the blog site will be in the description. This will be a relatively long one, so buckle up and hang in there if you want to get the whole thing, or just go to the blog site and get the whole article. Let me know what you think of this stuff. All right. Adam's ethical dilemma and the providential necessity of the fall, covenant solidarity, federal headship, and the redemptive design of God. And this gets right into the whole thing. This essay argues that traditional moral evaluations of Adam's transgression in Genesis 3 overlook a key narrative moment. Adam acts after Eve has already transgressed, which changes the ethical context. Adam then faces a dilemma. Preserve obedience and remain in Eden, or join Eve to maintain human unity. Although historical theology, especially within Augustinian and Reformed traditions, and this is where we need to be careful here, they frame Adam as the federal head whose disobedience introduces sin and death to humanity, referencing Romans 5:12 as their proof text. This view often stresses covenantal breach and moral collapse without fully considering the narrative order and its ethical impact. This is where you really need to read the text carefully and really delve into it. Okay? Genesis 3 presents not just rebellion, but a catastrophic ethical dilemma. And this is the thing where everyone misses on here. There's a within divine providence. With Eve's transgression, right? And the sanctuary already defiled. So remember, Eve is working in that priestly role in the sanctuary, right? And so when she eats of the fruit, she's defiled, ergo the sanctuary is not defiled with her presence. Okay? So with the sanctuary already defiled, Adam faced mutually exclusive goods. Preserve personal obedience, his personal obedience to God, and remain in Eden, or join Eve in death and preserve humanity's unity. Read through the lenses of Second Temple covenantal imagination, divine council worldview, Pauline federal theology, and Jonathan Edwards. He was considered one of the greatest evangelists in American history. Right? He's early on in our history, before the Revolution, and he's absolute wonder in what he was able to do and his theological insights. So check into Jonathan Edwards if you have never heard of him. Jonathan Edwards' Doctrine of Providence. Adam's act is tragic yet necessary within God's redemptive design, remaining sin, but possibly the only prudent ethical course to preserve covenant structure for the redemption. So I'm not saying that Adam didn't sin. What I'm saying is that he had an ethical issue that he had to work through. Okay, Eden as temple priestly commission. You've been hearing me talk about this a lot. Let's delve into this a little deeper. In Genesis 2:15 states that Adam was placed in the garden to work and to keep it. Abad and Samar. You've heard me say that a couple times now. These Hebrew verbs later describe priestly duties in Israel's sanctuary, especially Numbers 3:7-8. J.K. Beale, a very important academic at this point, persuasively claims that Eden functions as a prototypical temple, the model for Israel's tabernacle and temple. Humanity's vocation is thus priestly and royal, tasked with extending sacred order throughout creation. Within the divine council framework, Genesis 1:26 portrays humanity's creation as the result of heavenly deliberation. Humanity is established as God's vice-regent before celestial beings. The fall, therefore, causes cosmic significance. Adam's decision affects the structure of creation beyond personal morality. Okay, so this is far-reaching stuff here when Adam decides to eat the fruit. By the time Adam eats, the sanctuary is already defiled, though, right? The issue shifts from prevention to response. Adam didn't prevent or couldn't prevent the eating of the fruit by Eve, so now he has to deal with what's the response. Okay, the ethical crisis after Eve's transgression. The Hebrew text, and this is important here now, because if you read this just in English, you don't get this impression. The Hebrew text does not require Adam to be present when the serpent speaks to Eve, right? And that would be like Genesis 3:6. So the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was desired to make one wise. She took of its fruit and ate, and she also gave some to her husband. And then one says, well, Mark, right there. He was right there. She gave him the fruit, right? That's in English. Paul also notes a difference between being deceived and making a choice. Adam was not deceived, but the woman was deceived and became a transgressor. Therefore, Adam's sin is therefore done knowingly. And that's an important consideration here. Okay? When Adam encounters Eve after her transgression, sacred space has already been defiled. Levitical theology later insists that impurity cannot remain within sanctuary boundaries. Right? That's from Leviticus. Expulsion becomes inevitable. So, whether Adam was there right next to Eve or not, and the Hebrew does not require it, right? Eve has already eaten of the fruit. We now have a transgression. She is now defiled and has to be expelled. She faces expulsion from the garden, right? That can't be stopped. So, Adam now faces two incompatible goods. The first one is covenant solidarity with his wife, right? If Adam does not eat, Eve alone is expelled, and humanity fractures at creation, right? And that's something people always forget, who say, well, Adam's at fault. No, wait a minute here. If he doesn't eat the fruit, Eve gets expelled, and humanity's gone, right? There's a fracture in humanity. The unity of Genesis 2:21, the two shall become one flesh, would dissolve instantly anymore, right? Obedience isolates. Solidarity brings condemnation. The dilemma is tragic. He has two choices. Does he isolate from Eve, or does he bring condemnation on himself for disobeying God? So covenant solitary in Second Temple Judaism. Second Temple Jewish writings emphasize, and the reason I keep talking about Second Temple Judaism is just remember, we don't have a lot of writings that predate the Second Temple period. Second Temple period is approximately 400 years before Christ, right? With the rebuilding of the temple by Ezra, and right. So you have a problem. I would love to say I know exactly what the people thought of the scriptures and stuff before that time period. We don't have a lot of writing to go on. We have the text itself. We have the written text. But all the texts that we really have right now are all Second Temple period. And this includes stuff that we didn't have for very long. That we've only been around for since about the 1950s, like the Dead Sea Scrolls, and even later archaeology. So Second Temple period stuff is relatively new in terms of theology discussion, right? So always keep that in mind. We're trying to get the best idea of what actual people thought during this time, what the groups thought of the text. And this can only be found in the writings of the Second Temple period because we don't have writings that really predate that. The wisdom of Solomon sees Adam's fall as a result of cosmic conflict. Through the envy of the devil, death entered the world. And so the wisdom of Solomon and the Second Temple stuff all has this very Christian-esque sound to it. Ezra mourns Adam's failure, right? "O Adam, what have you done? For though it was you who sinned, the fall was not yours alone, but ours also, who are your descendants." Once again, very Christian sounding. The covenantal framework anticipates Paul's federal theology, where humanity is unified under representative heads rather than viewed as in isolated individuals. If Adam rejects solidarity, redemptive representative collapses with corporate unity. So the Pauline federal theology and representative necessity. Paul's parallel between Adam and Christ in Romans 5:12 through 19 and 1 Corinthians 15:21 to 22, right? And this is where Paul comes up with a statement. And you hear me repeat this constantly. "Therefore, just as sin came into the world through one man, death through sin, so death spread to all men because all sinned," right? But then we talk about the fact that death reigned from Adam and Moses, right? Even for those, right? And then in 1 Corinthians, "For as by a man came death, by a man has come also the resurrection of the dead." Okay, so this is that Adam brought in death and Christ resolves that. It depends on the premise of united federal headship. This whole concept that Paul has requires this united federal headship. Brandon Crowe, a very good academic, notes that Adam and Christ are each covenant representatives. Their actions determine the destiny of all counted as in them, right? If Adam obeys and Eve is expelled, humanity loses united representation in death. Paul's structural parallel fails. Redemption requires one humanity fell under Adam, and one humanity redeemed under Christ. Right? Adam's solidarity, even in death, preserves the covenant architecture for redemption. Jonathan Edwards, and I talked about him, and providential design. So Jonathan Edwards taught that the fall occurred under God's eternal decree to reveal divine glory more fully. God permitted the fall to display mercy and justice in ways unavailable to fallen creation. The Lamb is called slain from the foundation of the world. That's in Revelation 13:8. And grace is given before the ages began. That's 2 Timothy. So wait a minute. So all the stuff is happening. So the fall is part of the anticipated progression. In this framework, the fall is instrumental, not accidental. That's important. The fall is instrumental, not accidental. Adam acts with genuine agency, yet within God's sovereign purpose. Without the fall, you get no incarnation, no atonement, no resurrection, no glorified, redeemed humanity. Right? You need the fall to have the redemption of Christ. Adam's decision, though sinful, fits within a providentially necessary redemptive arc. Okay, let's talk about the ethical necessity. And this is one of the things I like to specialize in is ethics in my discussions. And there's an ethical necessity for Adam's choice. Adam's tragic choice, preserve obedience and lose humanity, right? So he preserves humanity and preserve humanity and incur death. Christian ethics cannot redefine evil as good, yet tragic dilemmas often involve unavoidable loss. Adam's refusal to eat preserves righteousness, right, but destroys covenant unity. His choice to eat preserves humanity and enables redemption. The first Adam dies with his bride in disobedience. The last Adam dies for for his bride in obedience. That's from Ephesians and Philippians, right? Talking about Adam and Christ. The structure of solidarity is identical. The mode differs. Adam's act is sinful, yet also preserves humanity, right? Through one man's disobedience, many were made sinners. Through one man's obedience, many are made righteous. Back to Romans. Without the first, the second has no covenantal stage. If Adam never sins, you don't have humanity, so, all of Romans just never occurs, right? So here's the conclusion. Adam's act is disobedience. Absolutely. No question asked. Scripture does not excuse sin. We're not excusing Adam's sin. Yet, through covenant solidarity, Pauline theology, Second Temple ideas, divine council thinking, and Edwards' providence, right? I go back to Jonathan Edwards. I love Jonathan Edwards' writings. His choice is tragic, but necessary to God's plan. If Adam refuses, humanity fractures and redemption collapses. If Adam joins Eve, humanity falls together and can be redeemed together. The fall is not a mistake, but the start of God's plan. Keep that in mind. Adam's tragic choice prepares for Christ's glory. The first Adam needed death sets the stage for the last Adam's victory. If Adam doesn't fall, there's no need for Christ. Right? So it's necessary. Redemption does not merely restore Eden. It surpasses it. Okay, actually I have a couple other appendix items I'm going to be adding to this that fills in a lot of holes in here. This is a shortened version of this article that I redid. If you have questions, let me know. But there's a lot that goes into this, and there's actually quite a bit more I need to discuss on this idea of why did Adam eat the fruit, and what were the various options available to him. Okay, so ask questions. Let me know what you think. If you have some ideas you want me to explore, let me know. I'm more than happy to do that. This is what I do, right? Is research, writing, and discussion. So, hope you liked it. If you did, do like the video. Do share it with a friend. Do subscribe if you haven't done so to the channel. It helps us out greatly. And thank you very much for that. If you want this full article, it's going to be on the blog. So the link will be in the description. And have a great day. And be blessed. Remember, God is good all the time.